And that toxicity is leaking into the reputation of the foundation. He's apologizing, but it's already spilt milk. You cannot put it back in the jar.
And what does Bill Gates' public acknowledgement of his mistakes in associating with Jeffrey Epstein and his apology to foundation staff really reveal about accountability and leadership in global philanthropy? And also, is he now doing this to try and clear his name? Because we know that the UK, that the King's brother is even being held accountable. Will this also happen in the US?
King's brother being accountable, he's already been, that is a different conversation. He was stripped of his rights for a title, and they're probably going to not keep him in the line of succession at all after all of this. And he was arrested and then released within 24 hours. So that particular justice system has its own way of working. US itself, this was, I think, the Gates Foundation's the pressure on Gates Foundation pushed Bill Gates to come out and make this admission. He also in the AI summit in Delhi did not address it, which was good because it would have tainted the AI summit as well by association. So right now, Bill Gates is toxic. His association with Epstein is clear after conviction. His own moral and ethical conduct is under question. And he's trying not to save face for himself, but to safeguard his legacy in the name of Gates Foundation. Of course, whether the foundation as of now is not guilty, but guilty by association only with Gates. And Gates is as morally corrupt as it comes right now. So what they're trying to do is damage control in terms of health is questionable itself. Why would you choose to associate with somebody who is already convicted of sex trafficking and associations with minors? So that itself shows that right now, because of public pressure, he is apologizing. He cannot be washed clean, but at least he hopes his stain doesn't bleed into the foundation and his legacy. But the fact that he allowed his presence to accommodate Epstein in associations and meetings with the Gates Foundation is bad enough for the foundation. And I do not know the future. I hope that the foundation continues to do its good work, but I do not know how they will be able to wash this particular stain off.
Thank you, Shruti, but please don't go too far, as I'll be back with you very shortly. Democratic lawmakers wore badges reading "Release the Files" during US President Donald Trump's address, signalling support for survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. The protest was aimed at pressuring the administration to make public all remaining documents related to after years of delays and sealed records. The White House did not immediately comment on the demonstration or on any potential release of additional files. We are now being rejoined by Shruti. Shruti, thank you for rejoining us here. Does the demand to release the Epstein-related files, as we know, some people are saying all the files have been released, people are saying not all the files have been released. Does this reflect broader concerns about transparency and accountability in holding in powerful individuals into to take accountability?
You're right there, Ellie. There are redactions, heavy redactions. The redactions were permitted to protect victims, to prevent use of those files in the dark web as pornographic content. It was meant to protect people that were violated by Epstein and his associates. And now a lot of the redactions protect the rich and powerful. We know what is being said, but who is it whom written by, that is blocked out. The name of the victim sometimes was released, but the person who wrote it, the powerful man who probably sent that email, his email and name is preserved. So they are protecting those who do not need protection. They have not been truthful completely in their release of the files. The fact that they got released is a big deal. It has taken a lot of public push to actually get these files released in whatever format they are present in right now. But there is definitely political shielding that is happening in the name of Epstein files. I believe that the Oversight Committee has also been looking into whether a few pages, I think about 50 odd pages, of FBI interviews related to Donald Trump and any allegations related to Epstein have been withheld. So there are questions like that being raised, which show that maybe with just redactions and withholding pages that are sensitive should not be encouraged in any way or format. A full transparency model is definitely required, but will that transparency create more victims, more confusion, or deliver justice is something that we all need to understand. That the DOJ has said that they will not issue any more cases on the basis of Epstein files. That means even if these files are released, the only justice they can get is a social form of justice rather than the legal form of justice. They are not looking to pursue more people in this incident. So there is no legal recourse until unless there's already a legal case under review. The DOJ will not be taking any kind of suo motu cognizance or something like this. This is going to only be a social format, maybe a public acknowledgement of their crimes, but not a legal basis as of now.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. Top Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer has criticised US President Donald Trump's record-length State of the Union speech, calling it delusional. Schumer stated that the speech failed to address the struggles faced by ordinary Americans. He said that Americans have never seen a State of the Union so disconnected from reality. Schumer further emphasized that Trump's portrayal of America did not align with the experiences of most working Americans. We are now being joined by Ambassador Suresh Goel, who is a former Indian diplomat joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What does Senator Chuck Schumer's characterization of President Trump's speech as delusional reveal about the deep divide in Washington over the state of the nation and national priorities?
I think what you said really reflects the true picture of the debate in Washington at this stage in time. Is actually deep divide between the Democrats and the Republicans. And also, if we have to look at the data coming from public opinion, coming from Washington, the popularity rate of President Trump seems to be going down consistently. So that would explain really the kind of views which are coming from Democratic side. All I would say is that the differences between Democrats and Republicans, particularly in the debate on the State of the Union address, are very common. I mean, after all, these are political affairs, really speaking. But this year, particularly, the divide is very, very vociferous and rather huge. The way it is being done, I had never really heard of alternative rallies being organized to distract attention from the State of the Union address. So yes, there is a deep divide, and this divide may or may not reflect on, impact on the way President Trump functions.
And to what extent is Schumer's critique a substantive political response versus a strategic move ahead of key midterm elections, especially as Trump touted economic and security achievements that opponents dispute?
Well, yes, I think the debate will have an impact on the midterm elections. But very often we find that by the time the elections take place, if you recall, actually, even the main presidential elections, there were a different kind of tenor of the debate at that time. And the elections did not actually reflect the kind of views and the debate that existed before the elections. And in this case also, yes, I would tend to agree that this kind of a debate and on the strategic issues would have an impact on the midterm elections. But then ultimately the politics would take over, and the Republicans will also really weigh, they will look at the possibilities of if any change or any slide in the popularity of the election results of the Republicans, how it is going to impact on the future, the elections for the president. So therefore, I would say that uh, I would not characterize the debate on the State of the Union as having a very uh, decisive impact on the midterm elections. There will be some impact, but we will have to wait and see. Yes.
Thank you, but please don't go too far, as I'll be back with you very shortly. Democratic lawmakers and activists held a counter rally in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday during President Donald Trump's State of the Union address. The rally, which began an hour before Trump's speech, featured prominent senators and advocacy leaders who condemned Trump's policies. They accused the administration of spreading falsehoods and undermining democracy. Senators Chris Murphy and Chris Van Hollen pointed to what they called a state of denial in Trump's speech, highlighting rising inequality, attacks on civil liberties, and the deepening crisis in American democracy. The rally was a call to action for voters to hold the administration accountable as the president's approval ratings slip amid rising concerns over Iran and the economy. We're now being joined back by Ambassador Suresh. Thank you for joining us back here on News X World. How effective are simultaneous rallies and boycotts rather than a traditional in-chamber protests in conveying democratic criticism of the administration policies and priorities?
I would certainly see them as more effective and having more impact. And these are the kind of rallies which are being planned and held with a view to the midterm elections and building a public opinion in favor of change towards the democratic vote. So therefore, politically much more effective than just an in-chamber debate, which is really not likely to make much of a difference to the midterm vote, I would say.
Thank you, Ambassador Suresh, but please don't go too far again, as we'll be back very shortly. During his State of the Union address, US President Donald Trump claimed that Russia and China's defense systems failed during a recent operation in Venezuela. Trump asserted that advanced US military technology played a decisive role in neutralizing Russian and Chinese-made devices and defense system, allowing US forces to complete their mission with minimal resistance. He stated that these systems, including air defense radars and missile systems sourced from Russia and China, did not work during the operation. This comment highlights the ongoing competition between the US and Russia over military capabilities. Trump's remarks underline the effectiveness of US suppression tactics against foreign defense systems, raising concerns about the operational readiness of Russian and Chinese military exports. We are now being rejoined by Ambassador Suresh. Thank you for joining us again for News X World. How credible are assessments that Venezuela's air defense system, including China and Russian-made services and devices, were ineffective due to poor maintenance or lack of integration or operational issues rather than inherent design flaws? And why is Trump saying this now?
there had been reports immediately after the US operation in Venezuela that the Russian and the Chinese equipment which President Maduro at that time had for the defense of Venezuela did not work. There were speculations at that time that it was basically because either the equipment was not properly maintained or there were some defects in the equipment, etc., etc. But those reports have not been proved till now. They have remained a matter of speculation. It is also interesting to note that there has been, to my knowledge at least, there has been no report from the Ministry of Defense or the Defense Department of the USA about what they thought the Venezuelan defenses were like, whether it was the poor quality of equipment or what. There has been no report at all so far. Until such a report comes, which is more authentic at the level of experts, uh, things will purely remain in the realm of assessments, speculations, etc., etc. And therefore, I would say really that what President Trump is now saying sounds to me more like really a speculative kind of a statement rather than anything authenticated by the true state of affairs. But yes, one has to be aware of what possibly could have been. There were reports that even the president, personnel close to President Maduro, they actually did not do what they were supposed to do. They were just reports, again speculative. So there will be speculations for a long time till authentic reports are in. Till now, they are not.
And how, in what ways could the apparent vulnerabilities exposed in Venezuela's defense network affect China and Russia's future arms exports and diplomatic relations with recipient countries?
From what I see in the reports, most of the countries who were buying equipment from China, I cannot say the same for Russia because Russia has been deeply engaged in the war in Ukraine, but Russia has been a steady and reliable supplier of defense equipment, including to India. And there has been no cause to find anything wrong with that supply so far. So I I have not seen anywhere at all that the other countries who are buying goods from or China and Russia are supplying to them that they have gone back to on their orders or were finding it difficult. No, and therefore, till authentic reports come in, I don't think other countries are going to be guided by the speculations.
Thank you, Ambassador
Thank
Suresh,
you.
but please don't go too far as we will be back with you shortly. We have some breaking news for you now. Iran has strongly rejected US claims about its missile program, dismissing them as big lies. The Iranian Foreign Ministry responded to US President Donald Trump's statement from his State of the Union address, which alleged that Tehran was developing missiles capable of striking the United States. Ismail Bakay, the ministry's spokesman, called the claims a repetition of big lies, stating that the allegations regarding Iran's nuclear program and ballistic missiles. We're now being rejoined again by Ambassador Suresh. Thank you for joining us back here for this breaking news. From his speech, he knew the world was watching for this, and he knew he would get a rise, I think, out of Iran about what he said. What do you think is going to happen now? Because he's saying he wants diplomacy, but at this rate, I think Iran's become a bit annoyed by it all now.
Well, I'm sure Iran is a bit jittery, really, with the developments because I think Iran does want to give a charge opportunity to diplomatic negotiations. They are going to be meeting in Geneva again to discuss Iran's nuclear program. Uh, I do not know how far will Iran go in making concessions to the USA on the nuclear program, it will be difficult for them to roll back their enrichment program to the extent that the USA wants. On the other hand, the USA, President Trump, to be more precise, has mobilized so much in the Gulf there around Iran that uh, I would find it difficult to believe that they would withdraw without showing the strength. So the situation is rather uncertain, volatile, and rather dangerous. And I suspect some show of force would take place, but I do hope that it does not break out into a major war.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Ambassador
Thank you.
Suresh, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you so much. US President Donald Trump has set a new record for the longest ever State of the Union address. The speech was approximately 1 hour and 48 minutes, surpassing the previous record held by Bill Clinton, who spoke for 1 hour and 20 minutes in 2000. Trump also beat his own record, which he set last March, with a 1 hour 40-minute address. This makes his speech the longest before a joint session of Congress in over 60 years, as recorded by the American Presidency Project, which has been tracking speech durations since 1964. A Turkish Air Force F-16 fighter jet crashed near a major highway in western Turkey in the early hours of Wednesday, killing its pilot and prompting a large-scale emergency response, according to official statements. The incident has raised fresh questions about flight safety as authorities launched a full investigation into the cause of the crash. The aircraft took off shortly after midnight from the 9th Main Jet Base Command in Balıkesir province. According to the Turkish Ministry of Defense, radio and radar contact with the F-16 was lost soon after takeoff, prompting immediate search and rescue operations. Military and civilian teams, including security forces, firefighters and medical personnel, were dispatched to the suspected crash area. The wreckage was soon located near a section of the Istanbul-Izmir highway, a major transport route in the region. Local media reported that debris from the aircraft was scattered across a wide area, leading to temporary road closures as emergency crews secured the site. Authorities said no civilians were injured in the incident. The Defense Ministry confirmed that the pilot did not survive the crash, describing him as having been martyred, a term used in Turkey to honour service members killed in the line of duty. The pilot's identity was not immediately released, pending notification of family members. Officials said the cause of the crash remains unknown. An accident inquiry team has been appointed to examine the wreckage, review flight data and analyse communications and operational conditions. The Turkish Air Force said it will share findings once the investigation is complete, reiterating its commitment to flight safety and support for the fallen pilot's family. Tropical cyclone Horacio has been labelled the strongest storm of 2026, following its rapid intensification over the southwest Indian Ocean. The storm reached peak wind speeds of 150 knots, which is equivalent to a Category 5 cyclone, making it one of the most powerful weather systems of the year. Horacio formed east of Mauritius and near Rodriguez Island, but did not make a direct landfall, limiting its damage potential. However, it still generated dangerous seas and strong winds that threatened nearby islands, creating a tense situation for those in its path. Horacio's explosive intensification occurred within a very short time frame, rapidly strengthening before its winds reached 260 kilometers per hour. The storm's label as the strongest of the year is mainly due to its peak wind intensity, which occurred during a brief yet powerful strengthening phase. while other factors such as minimum central pressure and storm size also define the strength of cyclones. Horacio's maximum sustained winds made it most intense storm observed in 2026 so far. Despite its initial power, Horacio began to weaken quickly. By February the 24th, the storm winds had decreased significantly, with the Joint Typhoon Warning Center predicting further weakening in the coming hours. The primary factors contributing to this rapid decline in intensity included the intrusion of dry air into the system and increasing vertical wind shear. These conditions disrupted the storm structure, causing it to weaken more swiftly than expected. While Horacio did not cause catastrophic landfall, its extreme winds and the threat it posed to the nearby islands made it a significant weather event. Authorities in the region are closely monitoring the storm as it moves further away from land, continuing to weaken. The combination of Horacio's quick intensification and equally swift weakening has made it unique and notable storm in 2026 cyclone season. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome to NewsX World. I'm Ellie Richardson. US President Donald Trump is delivering his highly anticipated State of the Union address to a joint session of Congress. This marks a significant moment in Washington as President Trump addresses both lawmakers and the American public, outlining his administration's achievements, future plans, and vision for the country. The speech comes at a pivotal time for the US, with ongoing debates around the economy, national security, and foreign policy. Let's cut across to his speech.
Good. For decades, it had been the policy of the United States never to allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Many decades. Since they seized control of that proud nation 47 years ago, the regime and its murderous proxies have spread nothing but terrorism and death and hate. They've killed and maimed thousands of American service members and hundreds of thousands and even millions of people with what's called roadside bombs. They were the kings of the roadside bomb. And we took out Soleimani. I did that during my first term. Had a huge impact. He was the father of the roadside bomb. And just over the last couple of months with the protests, they've killed at least, it looks like, 32,000 protesters. 32,000 protesters in their own country. They shot them and hung them. We stopped them from hanging a lot of them with the threat of serious violence. But this is some terrible people. They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. After Midnight Hammer, they were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, and in particular, nuclear weapons. Yet they continue, starting it all over. We wiped it out, and they want to start all over again, and are at this moment again pursuing their sinister ambitions. We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen. And no nation should ever doubt America's resolve. We have the most powerful military on earth. I rebuilt the military in my first term. We're going to continue to do so. Also, we just approved a $1 trillion budget. We have no choice. We have to be strong, because hopefully we will seldom have to use this great power that we built together. It's really called peace through strength, and it's been very, very effective. So thanks to Republicans in Congress, we're investing that record number of dollars, have no choice, in the United States Armed Forces. Also creating a lot of jobs, but we're not even doing it for that reason. Because as I said, we have more jobs, more people working today than ever before in the history of our country. And NATO countries are friends and allies. They are. They're our friends and they're our allies. Have just agreed, at my very strong request, to pay 5% of GDP for military defense rather than the 2%, which they weren't paying. We were paying for almost all of NATO. Now they're paying 5 as opposed to not paying 2. And getting that 5% was something which everyone said would never be done, could not happen. We got it really easily. One meeting. And big difference between 2% that's not paid. We were paying the freight of many of them. Very few were paid up. Now 5%, then they're paid. And everything we send over to Ukraine is sent through NATO, and they pay us in full. They pay us totally in full. Every branch of our armed forces is setting records for recruitment. This is so exciting. And every service member recently. And every service member recently received a warrior dividend of $1,776.
We are now being joined by Ernesto Casanda, who is an associate professor at American University and director of the Immigration Lab, joining us from Washington, DC. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World to speak about Trump's speech. Now, he's said a lot and he's gone in about how he's solved 8 wars and he wants to solve the 9th, which is the Ukraine-Russia war, and said that the war would never happen if I was president. What do you think about that?
Well, that is not true. There was a previous invasion of Crimea by Russia, and indeed, while the second invasion 4 years ago, Biden was president, Trump, during the campaign, promised that after one day back in the presidency or soon after, he would end this conflict. And he still comments about how surprised it is, how hard it's been to solve it. And he's been president for over a year, and Russia is still conducting attacks against the Ukrainians. So while it was easy during the campaign and early on to not take any responsibility for this conflict, right now it is one of the most important issues. The other issues that he claims to have solved were skirmishes or misunderstandings between India and Pakistan, and maybe he helped some of the negotiations so things wouldn't escalate. But to call it an ending to a war is an exaggeration. So unfortunately today, the U.S. is not completely at peace, and Trump could be doing more to help on this regard.
And he also started mentioning Iran and said, my preference is to resolve the Iran nuclear issue because he wants to do it via diplomacy, and said how Iran is the #1 sponsor of terror and I can't let that happen. He knows the world is watching right now. What do you think Iran would think about that statement?
Well, there's the pressure on Iran to disarm. This is not a new topic. This is not a new issue. There's been negotiations supposedly. It's very interesting that Marco Rubio, as the Secretary of State, hasn't been more involved in these issues. But again, a number of contradictions. Early on, there was the argument that the Trump administration had bombed some of the enrichment facilities so that uranium wouldn't be enriched for using nuclear weapons, and now they're claiming that they're actually very close to developing nuclear weapons, and that's why they have to either have a commitment to stop that from the Iranians, or that they would even increase the attacks or invade. So again, a series of contradictions. For the US public, it's really hard to know what's really going on. And the Iranians know that there's a lot of pressure. Early on, also, President Trump has said that if Iran continue killing protesters, that there will be action for part of the U.S. But what we know is that nationwide protests and peaceful protests were met with a lot of violence by the police forces and security forces of Iran, and the U.S. didn't do anything. That wasn't really a red line. So we really don't know what to expect regarding Iran today.
Thank you, Ernesto, but please don't go too far as we will cut back to you very shortly. Thank you. We're now being joined by Matthew Vadum, who's an American journalist and author, joining us as well from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us here today on NewsX World. As Trump's talking, he is also talking about about Israel and Gaza, and said Hamas worked alongside with Israel and said that he's resolved the war. Do you think that's a bit of a far-fetched statement, or what do you think of that?
It is puffery. He is what a salesman does, and Donald Trump is first and foremost a salesman and a self-promoter. And that's a successful billionaire developer. So he tends to exaggerate. I think that he has done a lot, definitely, to advance peace between Gaza and Israel, but it is not finished. The process is not complete. They're barely moving into the second stage of the peace process right now, and it may indeed result in a durable peace, but I don't think we're quite there yet. And some people are suspicious of this board of peace that he's created, which seems to be like a mini United Nations to handle international affairs, and it's still not entirely clear how it's going to work, and not a lot of the details aren't really ironed out. I think it's a bit premature for President Trump to claim that he resolved the war between Gaza and Israel, but he definitely has done a lot to move the ball forward there. You have to give him credit for that.
And then Trump also spoke on Operation Midnight Hammer, and then went on to also say, my preference is to resolve Iran's nuclear issue via diplomacy. Do you think that he has been trying to do that by diplomacy, or is him constantly sending out aircrafts and naval ships to the Middle East contradicting that?
Well, President Trump has been trying to accomplish his goals in Iran through diplomacy, but it's diplomacy with a big stick, one might say. He has assembled a massive armada in the waters surrounding Iran, both I think in the Mediterranean and in the other waters to the south and to the southeast. So it's fair to say that he's trying to negotiate, but he's the threat of military intervention by the United States is very much alive, and it has to be in the backs of their minds when the negotiating teams are talking about dismantling Iran's nuclear weapons program, which I predict it will never do. It doesn't want to do it. Under President Obama, they had a kind of arrangement whereby there'd be inspections and they would make certain concessions with respect to their nuclear weapons program, and they didn't follow the agreement, and it wasn't a very good agreement to begin with. So I'm really not sure how much more can be accomplished in terms of negotiations, but the Trump administration, to its credit, is trying to negotiate. But it remains to be seen whether that's going to be successful, or whether they're going to have to do another midnight hammer type operation and hit the Revolutionary Guard and the other militias in Iran that are essential to propping up the theocratic regime there.
And he's spoken about the Supreme Court and the ruling about the tariffs, and basically says that they're very unfortunate. And as we know from this past week, the Supreme Court said you can't do this, you need to get rid of these tariffs. They said it was unruling, and then Trump then put on 10%, and now he's put on 15%. But this can only run for 150 days, if I'm correct. Do you think him talking about the Supreme Court in this meeting is causing anger within Congress right now?
From the reaction to that part of the speech in Trump's State of the Union address tonight, it did seem to spur some anger, but that was anger by Republicans, it appeared, who were upset with the Supreme Court's ruling that President Trump described as unfortunate. You are referring to the Learning Resources versus Trump ruling last Friday, in which the Supreme Court said the president has no authority to levy tariffs under IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. But then, as Justice Kavanaugh pointed out Justice Brett Kavanaugh pointed out in his dissent, Trump is still free to levy tariffs under other authorities, under other federal laws, and that is what he has since done, like almost immediately. Within a few hours after the Supreme Court's decision, he had announced that he was going to impose a new round of tariffs, and that is what he's done. You're referring to initially he said it would be a 10% global tariff, and then he upped it to 15% I don't think he's changed the number since then, so it's probably 15%. And those new tariffs, no doubt, will be challenged in court too. And I don't, as a journalist, I cover the Supreme Court and the courts, but I'm not an expert in trade law. So I can't tell you if those tariffs are going to be upheld when they are inevitably challenged in court. But I'm sure they will be challenged in court and soon. And you may have, if they don't pass legal muster, I wouldn't be surprised if the lower courts enjoin these new tariffs as well.
Thank you, Matthew. Please don't go anywhere, as we will be joining back with you very shortly. We're now just going to cut back to Ernesto. Thank you for waiting, Ernesto. We have also heard that Trump wants to, he demands Congress to pass voter ID law and speaks about cheating during elections, as he wants to stop that for midterms. Is that a dig back at the elections when Biden came into office?
Well, again, a number of false claims from the president here. He's going back to his big lie that he won, indeed, the election in 2020, and then it was stolen, and that's why Biden won. But all the evidence, all the cases in court, all the recounts, whatever you want to call it, all the evidence points that, indeed, Donald Trump lost the popular vote and lost the Electoral College. He lost that election, while many other Republicans actually won offices. So now he's trying to, again, call the specter that there may be fraud in this 2026. Once again, blame it on undocumented migrants who know they cannot vote. They rarely, very rarely vote, and the few cases that are found every once in a while are not enough to change any results. There's no plans for undocumented people, asylum seekers, non-citizens to vote. That's not a thing. But what Trump knows is that the Republicans are probably going to do very bad in these midterm elections. So that's why he's preempting and trying to either create an excuse or create the environment for him to change the law. And he mentioned today getting rid of the mail-in ballot, which is voting by mail, which is very popular in the U.S. And Trump believes lately that more Democrats use it than Republicans, and that may be a cause of fraud. And indeed, the mail ballots are counted at different points during the night. So he created this conspiracy, or he believed that was one of the reasons he lost the last presidential election. But that is not the case that we can be very certain about. And again, it's many experts on electoral law again recounts there's no basis for these allegations.
And it's been told that Epstein victims are set to attend the State of Union's address because several Democratic lawmakers have invited the survivors to be their guests, emphasising the need for accountability regarding the Epstein case. And they want investigations to go into the Epstein case and find out who was associated within his network. As we know, in the UK, Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, was arrested last week, and then previous Lord Mountbatten also arrested this week. Do you think this is what America's not losing out on, is putting these investigations forward?
Yes. Many people in the U.S. are pointing to other countries doing a lot, starting investigations, arresting people, following the evidence, and showing that there's a rule of law, while the U.S. The Department of Justice, under Donald Trump's supervision and direction, has been not only slow in persecuting any wrongdoing, but also there have been new releases of information today that there's a lot of evidence that he's been hiding data, interestingly, particularly allegations that point directly at at him. So yes, the U.S. is still in a very early stage of persecuting people affiliated with Epstein for their many crimes, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It's just been blocked by Trump. It's going to take a while. But again, what happens in November of 2026 and after in electoral terms is going to determine how fast and how people are brought to justice.
And he spoke about how he's sorted the war with Israel and Gaza and helped with the ceasefire, said how he's stopped 8 wars in his first year, and he's looking to stop the 9th, which is Russia and Ukraine. And then he went to praise Witkoff, Kushner and Rubio. What do you think about this bold statement that he's helped with this ceasefire when we well know that there is still a war going on?
Indeed. As our colleague was saying, Trump tends to exaggerate, to claim credit for things that he had nothing to do with. And what he has a lot of faith in Witkoff and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and in Marco Rubio, they have not been the master negotiators that he says them to be. Putin has really playing circles around them, and so has Netanyahu. And the ones that have been great negotiators and gotten their way have been those 2 global leaders, not the negotiators for the U.S.
Thank you, Ernesto, but please don't go too far, as we will be joining back with you later on. We're now going to be joined by Matthew again. Matthew, thank you for joining us back here on NewsX World to speak about Trump's speech right now. Trump's brought up Venezuela and says he's working with the new leader, with Delcy Rodriguez. What do you think he means by saying he's working with her and he's helping her?
I think that he is. I'm not 100% certain what he means, but it appears that he is referring to efforts to rebuild the oil infrastructure in Venezuela, which has rotted after so many years of socialist neglect. President Trump's, one of his overriding concerns with Venezuela is its ability to pump out oil that can be traded on international markets. He wants the American companies who.
The physics was known for quite a while.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump uses State of the Union stage to warn Iran over nuclear and security threats. He highlighted Iran's missile and nuclear activities as grave risks and hinting at possible stronger measures, even as he said diplomacy remains preferable. The top Democratic senator called US President Donald Trump's record-length State of Union speech delusional and said it failed to address the struggles of ordinary Americans. Bill Gates took responsibility for his actions over ties to the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in a town hall meeting with employees of the Gates Foundation. Documents released by the US Justice Department has indicated that Gates and Epstein met repeatedly after Epstein's prison term. The UK's government is committing to releasing documents on ex-Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's past role as a trade envoy after the Jeffrey Epstein scandal widened with the arrest of the veteran UK politician. British police say searches at Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's former home in south-east England have concluded after the former prince was arrested last week on suspicion of misconduct in public office due to his ties with late US sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. China's Premier Li Qiang has urged Germany to help safeguard global free trade. He said he was facing headwinds. He said China and Germany, as two major economies, should try jointly safeguard multilateralism and free trade. Li told German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as the two met in Beijing. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Israel for a two-day visit that both countries have cast as chance to deepen relations as regional concerns mount over the risk of military conflict between the United States and Iran. The UN General Assembly voiced support for Ukraine on the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion. It passed by a tally of 107 countries with 112 against and 51 absentations, which included the United States. And for your top story this hour, Bill Gates has publicly apologized for his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, calling it a huge mistake during a town hall meeting with the Gates Foundation staff. Gates acknowledged that his meetings with Epstein were solely for philanthropic discussions and took responsibility for involving foundation executives in those meetings. He clarified that he did not engage in any illicit activities and expressed regret for the negative impact it had on others. Documents from the US Department of Justice revealed that Gates and Epstein met after Epstein's prison term to discuss expanding Gates' efforts. Gates also admitted to personal matters, including affairs with Russian women, but emphasized these were unrelated to Epstein's victims. Previously, Melinda French Gates stated that her ex-husband Bill Gates must personally address questions arising from his name appearing in new Jeffrey Epstein files, calling the situation painful and a reminder of muck from their marriage. She expressed unbelievable sadness and emphasized accountability for those named, rather than speaking for him. According to experts, all this somehow proves that the association and involvement of Bill Gates in Epstein's scandal. Now it remains to be seen what, if any, formal actions will be taken by US authorities in response to Gates' public acknowledgement. We are now being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, who is a Defence and International Relations Analyst, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. How effective is Gates' apology to his foundation staff in addressing internal concerns and broader public doubts about his judgment in meeting Epstein, especially after, given the Department of Justice's released documents? And he's assertive that he did nothing illicit and saw nothing illicit. How does this affect his foundation and his own accreditation?
Good afternoon, Ellie. Thanks for calling me. See, his responding that I did nothing illicit or saw nothing illicit does not hold good. It is good that he has came and clarified, but we have also seen how his ex-wife Melinda has said that she actually cautioned her ex-husband, and she said that he must clarify what he has done wrong. And it is known to the world through the Epstein files that Bill Gates had this communicable STD through Russian Gulf, and that was the main reason that Melinda left him. So once when he's asserting publicly that he neither engaged nor witnessed any illegal conduct during his association with Jeffrey Epstein, but if we see in geopolitics and the elite networks, legality is just one dimension of the reputational equation. And controversy stems from Bill Gates acknowledging his meeting with Epstein after 2008 conviction of Epstein. So though Gate has described these meetings as a mistake and claiming that they were related to philanthropy. The critical issue is not merely criminal liability, it is the judgment, risk assessment, and elite moral signaling. See, Gate is not just a tech billionaire, he's one of the most influential power actors, and he had his footprints in the vaccine diplomacy, the agriculture reforms in Africa, the public health infrastructure, climate transitioning finances. So when people are already, the southern vaccine hesitancy was already there, people always see these things with suspicion that Western influence, especially in medicine, could be a part of a larger game. And somewhere, when a quasi-sovereign philanthropic influence goes through a reputational erosion, it affects the public trust in global health systems, the vaccine credibility, the broader legitimacy of technocratic global governance. So I think his mere association with the financier or maybe academics or the politicians or royalty, everything will be fueled by suspicions, because in the era of populist politics, it reinforces anti-elite narratives and it brings them to public scrutiny. See, Gates once symbolizes the benevolent capitalism, but today he himself and his foundation is at the brink of shrinking because of not he's being proven as a criminal, but because of the association risk. So I think when your reputation erodes, in the credibility is the capital which goes down. So it somewhere breaks the trust of people in international institutions, and it also weaponizes the information warfare, where we understand that the Western have their own hypocrisy, and somewhere they are doing anti-globalization things to have their own foundation secure, their own reputation secure, but not looking at the emotions of people which are actually being damaged due to this unaccountable behavior of billionaires. Ellie.
And in cases like this, where high-profile people interact with convicted offenders for supposed philanthropy discussions, what standard of vetting and ethical oversight should be expected?
See, when societies do these things, then somewhere we have to put people more accountable to what they are doing. The criminal procedures are not very strong, and that is why Epstein could build that island, and he was getting unnoticed because he was somewhere in the circle of elite people in power and helm of affairs who were, not just controlling the American narrative to the world, but there are links of people from the international politics and people from the legal department who were his associate. So global leaderships requires more moral authority, and people, when they see someone who was a global name doing philanthropy and he's associated with Epstein, somewhere the trust gets broken. Bill Gates was supposed to be speaking at Indian conference which happened on AI, but his name was pulled out at the last moment. So such things somewhere, show that how credible this threat is, where people of elite business class are doing things which can not just be illegitimate, but where is the public accountability? They are answerable to no one. It is only after so many years, even when it's more than 6 years since Epstein died, the files are coming out because President Trump promised. Had he had not promised, then these files would have been, eating dust somewhere, and people would not have been brought to justice. So more transparency in dealing of these people has to be done. More stricter laws have to be made, and not just the laws, the implementation of these laws and the answerability of people who are in the helm of affairs is very, very important, because it is trust which is being damaged. The structural influence of such people is vast, and how they are shaping not just their policies of their own country, but the geopolitics, the vaccine politics, the AI systems. Everything is compromised when people like this are in helm of affairs, and they're associated with people who are being criticized. And now it's known that Epstein was a criminal. So I think rather than being perceiving power as something you cannot touch, people have to be answerable, and more stricter laws are needed. Ellie.
And could Gates' public handling of this controversy, including acknowledging the mistake but denying any wrongdoing, influence how other global leaders and major donors manage similar reputational challenges?
Ellie, just accepting his association does not absolve him of the criminal charges. That we will have to see how profound are the crimes that have been done in his, which are in his knowledge. See, Epstein Gates phenomenal episode is a part of a larger phenomenon. It's not an individual thing itself. So the collapse of automatic trust in global leadership models happen. The societies will become more polarized because there are people whose name and reputation is being damaged because of this high profile case. So somewhere people will ask questions, because if Donald Trump is being questioned, and he also comes and says that, oh, I don't know what had happened. Andrew has said, oh, I don't know what happened. So everybody is trying to absolve themselves just because their name is there. But that does not absolve them of the responsibility and the moral responsibility they have towards the societies. So somewhere this is a very serious thing, and this impact is vast. It is not just limited to US or one island. It is vast. It is actually, damaging the entire world and the soft power which earlier these people had. So I think more serious things will come out once the entire file is read, and it is the more legal implications are cautioned by the Congress.
Thank you, but please don't go too far, as we will be back with you very shortly. US President Donald Trump used his State of the Union address to allege widespread fraud in Minnesota, claiming mismanagement and abuse of public funds. Trump did not provide specific evidence, but said his administration would investigate what he called systemic failures. He argued that fraud undermines public trust and said his government would hold officials accountable. The comments drew immediate criticism from Democrats, who dismissed the claims as unsubstantiated and politically motivated. The remarks added to a partisan tone that defined much of the speech. The White House offered no further details on the alleged fraud, while Minnesota officials denied any wrongdoing and said the claims lack evidence. We are now being rejoined by Himanshi. Thank you for rejoining up with us here for this. How has any of this really, how have they gone from saying that Minnesota has committed fraud? What did Trump mean by calling Minnesota a stunning example of corruption in his State of Union speech? And how has the administration's framing of alleged fraud there been challenged by the fact checkers and local officials?
See, this reflects tensions in American democracy. During the State Union address, when Trump said this, that there is a fraud in elections of Minnesota, it is something that symbolizes deeper ideological divide in the United States. See, United States' greater strength is the geopolitical strength, and historically, it has been institutionally very stabilized. However, when you do these repeated public allegations of electoral frauds, this will somewhere contribute to the erosion of faith in the democratic process, the institutional delegitimization, and also amplification of adversarial state. So somewhere, when internal trust declines, people are going to exploit it. And when we see Minnesota as a public system, it represents progressive urban politics, and we also see the Midwest battleground dynamics. We also see cultural debate around immigration and identity. We had seen how the ICE and Home Guard security had came down heavily. We had seen those protests happening where people were killed. So when Trump is targeting, the states frames a broader ideological war. It shows us that nationalism, versus the progressive multiculturalism. It also shows us the electoral integrity versus the systemic bias claims. And when Omar Ilhan's narrative we see, she's one of the most internationally visible progressive US lawmaker, and her political identity intersects the immigration politics, the Muslim representation in the Western democracy, and also the US foreign policy criticism. So a public clash between Trump and Omar is not just a domestic thing. It is also going to be broadcasted globally. Today we are discussing it as a cultural symbol of war and the democratic stress test. And it also shows us the debate of how Trump reacts to things which are not in his favor or he does not agree to. And this will have international repercussions also, because when US President Trump publicly alleges fraud in a state during formal constitutional address, the global leaders will observe it as, questioning the stability of US electoral system. It can also risk internal unrest, and it will also somewhere influence the predictability of American foreign policy. So I think they should, be more careful about what they're coming out and speaking in public. Ellie.
Thank you, Himanshi, but please don't go anywhere, as I will be joining back with you very soon. Tensions escalated during President Donald Trump's State of the Union address at the Representative Ilhan Omar accused him of lying about fraud in Minnesota. Trump was called a liar by Omar as he linked the Somali community to corruption in the state. In response, Trump criticized blue states for fraud and called for tougher immigration policies. The clash intensified when Omar and Representative Rashida Tlaib shouted, "Americans are being killed," as Trump defended his immigration stance. Democrats, including Omar and Pramila Jayapal, voiced their frustration, refusing to stand during Trump's remarks on protecting American citizens. We're now being joined once again by Himanshi Singh. Thank you for joining us back here for this. How did Trump's comments on immigration enforcement and alleged corruption in Minnesota spark one of the most visible confrontations with Omar and other Democratic lawmakers in the House chamber? And does Omar's public rebuke of the president during traditionally a formal address reflect a broader shift in the White House right now?
Ellie, we must understand that when people get personal, it becomes dirty. And Trump is trying to get very, very personal with Ilhan Omar. She's a Somalian American Muslim lawmaker, and it's a very, very vocal critic of US foreign policy. And she's also a symbol of progressive multicultural America. So when Trump clashes with Omar, the conflicts become more of ideological theater, because this shows us the nationalist populism versus the progressive globalization. On one side, America opens its gate for everybody. Then they come down and they want to close, and they want to have some sort of funny immigration laws where people are killed by the ICE and Home Guard. And when somebody is very vocal about the wrongdoings, Trump takes it very personally. So, however, as an international observer, we can see it, something like identity versus the personal crisis, and immigration debates will spill into executive discourses and democratic wrestling with the democratic transition, which this is what we are seeing. So somewhere, this sort of extreme polarization results in people becoming more and more radical. there will be civil unrest and cyber interferences will increase because you want to keep a watch on who's doing what. So somewhere you are also posing a bigger question on the electoral system. So you are actually questioning the own democracy and the people who have come out of the elections through that democracy. So somewhere, this divide is making democracy more and more vulnerable to influence operations, to which I think Trump must understand that this is not about the legitimacy of discourses. It is also about questioning the authority of its own democracy and the largest democracy like America.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. The Trump administration has imposed a 126% preliminary duty on solar imports from India, citing concerns over foreign subsidies that allegedly allowed Indian exporters to undercut US products. The US Commerce Department also set initial duties ranging from 86% to 143% on solar imports from Indonesia and Laos. The tariffs are aimed at protecting domestic solar manufacturers, but they also add uncertainty to an industry already struggling under the Trump administration's stance on trade. Solar imports from India, Indonesia and Laos made up 57% of the US solar market in 2025, and the new duties could severely limit India's access to the US market. The final determination will be issued in July. Meanwhile, the US is also conducting an anti-dumping investigation into solar cells from these countries. The move follows a petition from the US solar groups urging action to level the playing field for American manufacturers. We are now being joined by Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya, who is an economist and policy expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. How might these steep duties reshape global solar supply chains and the competitive dynamics between India, Indian exports and the US domestic manufacturers? How will this shape global supply chains?
Yeah, let's just understand what these tariffs really mean. They are not actually a regular tariff. It is based on the accusation that India is subsidizing its solar industry to the extent that that there is a accusation of 126% subsidy by the Indian government, which means that we are exporting about roughly $750 million worth of solar panels to the US. And that means that about $1 billion of subsidy is being given by the Indian government, which does not make sense. Why would a developing economy subsidize the rollout of clean energy in the US and pay $1 billion to do that? So clearly something is largely amiss in this construct. What is also happening is that there is an affront on free trade. Countries which are competitive in manufacturing solar panels, there is a trade barrier being put in whatever form. So this particular countervailing duty is a preliminary investigation, is based on a preliminary investigation. There has to be a detailed investigation after which the final tariffs will be put in, or what is technically called the countervailing duty. But during the time, there will be a tremendous amount of uncertainty as to what is going to happen, because as I mentioned, 126% really implies and accuses India of spending $1 billion to subsidize clean energy rollout in the US, which does not seem to be a valid accusation. And therefore, it disrupts the production, the supply chain. And India is one of the global value chain producers of solar panels. And therefore, the upstream for solar panels, that also gets impacted. India plays more on the downstream, which is the cell and the module part of it. So ingot and wafering and polysilica is largely imported into this country. It's only now that those capacities are being set up. but India is extremely competitive and efficient in building these solar panels and these modules, and therefore these imports from India being stopped by countervailing duties is basically stopping free trade. And if that's the case, then all trade breaks down. It's against WTO regime, and then we are back to where we were 100 years back.
And could this trade action strain broader economic and diplomatic ties between India and the United States, especially given recent efforts to enhance cooperation and reduce bilateral tensions?
Well, typically trade remedies continue irrespective of what the bilateral agreements are, because trade remedies are based on the technical term called injury of the domestic industry. So, so that action is irrespective of what are the trade agreements that are going on. Of course, it will have an impact because solar industry is one of the largest upcoming industry in India. So the Indian government and negotiators will take notice of this particular step because of the magnitude of the step. It's not 10, 15%, 20% countervailing duty. It's 126%, which is humongous, and it is disproportionate to what could possibly be happening. Even if there's an accusation of subsidy from the Indian government, it is unbelievable that it will be a 126% subsidy being given, and therefore there will be a shadow because it will also start questioning as to what is the point in having a trade agreement when it can get violated in various ways under the garb of countervailing duties and so on. And especially also if you look at in parallel what's happening in India, where anti-dumping duties which are recommended by the Directorate General of Trade Remedies in India are getting rejected or lapsed at a higher level, and therefore India is actually not pursuing trade remedies which are at legitimate interest of India, while the US is actually moving forward with trade remedies which are disproportionate and will probably not hold water once the investigations are properly done. So that does cast a long shadow on the overall trade negotiations, because the trade agreement that eventually comes out can get nullified by these kind of steps being taken up by any of the party for that matter.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jajit, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. In the State of the Union address today, US President Donald Trump reaffirmed his stance on Iran, emphasizing that while he prefers a diplomatic resolution to the ongoing confrontation, he will not allow the country to acquire nuclear weapons. Speaking to Congress, Trump stated that his preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy, but he is certain of one thing: that the US will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. The president's remarks come amid growing tensions with Iran as Washington continues to push for stronger measures to curb Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Trump's commitment to diplomacy, coupled with his firm stance on preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, highlights the administration's ongoing efforts to navigate this complex international issue. We are now going to be joined by Adrian Calamel, who is a fellow Arabian Peninsula Institute and terrorism scholar, joining us from New York. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. Trump spoke about how in Iran he believes that they are the number one terror, and my preference is to resolve Iran's nuclear issue via diplomacy. And then he also went to speak on about Operation Midnight Hammer. What do you think? He was speaking about Iran, saying that he is going to sort this out. Do you think he wants to really do it by diplomacy, or is he wanting to scare them by constantly sending out military personnel?
Well, first of all, good morning to Ellie, and it's good to see you again. He's been relatively consistent. I mean, this is the one issue with the Islamic Republic where I think he's shown consistency. Now, there's deliberate ambiguity with what he says, but he will not, he said it right in his speech, he will not let them enrich, he will not let them reprocess. Those are the two. Well, he said you will not let them have the nuclear weapon, but those are the two processes that need to happen for them to possess a nuclear weapon. Now, he did touch on Midnight Hammer. I think he misspoke there, because no, they didn't obliterate the nuclear program, because in reality, they're about 18 months away to 2 years to reconstituting it, and that's going to come back to play in his term. He also, I think, showed that, you know, he's not afraid to use force. He specifically mentioned Qasem Soleimani, 2019, when he took him out at Baghdad airport when there was a plot against the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. So, you know, and that was a severe blow to the ambitions of the Islamic Republic, and that was Khamenei's top advisor on the battlefield. So, you know, he's, and he finished it off with, you know, peace through strength, and he highlighted the human rights abuses. On the other side, you have a regime that will not back away from the enrichment and the reprocessing. There's no way they're going to do it. So what you have are two freight trains moving along here, and I really think it's just a matter of when action is taken.
Thank you, Adrian, but don't go too far, as I will join back with you very shortly. We're now going to go to David K. Johnston, who is an author and journalist, also joining us from New York. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. With Iran, like Adrian was just saying to me, he has been very insistent about what he wants. He has said, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. He knows the world was watching this speech and with what he was saying. How do you think Iran is going to take this?
Well, they don't want to be bullied or pushed around by the country that back in the early 50s overthrew their government and saddled them for decades with the vicious rule of the Shah. And they're certainly not happy that the person the Trump administration has been palling around with as a successor to the Ayatollahs is the son of the former dictator. On the other hand, as Adrian pointed out, you know, Trump did not destroy the efforts by the Iranians to enrich. The Ayatollahs will tell you that we're doing this for peaceful purposes, and we have not given any religious permission to create a bomb. I don't think many people will buy that and believe it or trust it. And Trump also wants to keep the Iranian government unsure of what he's up to. The one thing you know will not happen is a land invasion. The military assets Trump has there are more than adequate for fighters, bombers, drones, and missiles to rain down terror from the air, but they don't have the troops, the landing vehicles, or anything else for a ground assault. And Iran has roughly 1 million people who are trained soldiers, not all of them on active duty. So you're not talking about an insignificant military force were Trump foolish enough to try a ground assault. And I do not think there's any chance of that happening.
Thank you, but please don't go too far, as I will be coming back to you very shortly. Some more breaking from Trump's speech. US President Donald Trump has criticised the US Supreme Court after it struck down his global tariffs, calling the decision a blow to America's trade leverage. Trump said the ruling undermines his efforts to protect US industry and pressure trading partners he accuses of unfair practices. The court found that the tariffs exceeded the president's authority under existing law, limiting the use of emergency powers for broad trade action. In response, Trump vowed to pursue alternative legal and policy tools to impose trade penalties if he returns to office. The decision could have far-reaching implications for future US trade policy and executive power. We are now going to go back to Adrian. Thank you, Adrian, for staying with us today on NewsX World. So he said that the Supreme Court ruling in his speech was very unfortunate. And because, as we know, so he got told that he can't do these tariffs anymore by the Supreme Court. He then went and put 10% global tariffs and then 15% global tariffs for the world. And there's been major uproar. How do you think everyone's going to take this from his speech?
Well, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the one to speak on the economy and economics, and but I will say this is a major blow to his agenda. He was using the tariffs in some situations, I think, to shape other policies vis-a-vis certain countries. Now, this was not only part of his domestic plan, I think it might have been part of his foreign policy plan as well, and he's seen the Supreme Court rule it down. So this really puts him in a bit of a pickle, I would imagine, and he doesn't have a whole lot of time to figure this out, as far as I can imagine.
Thank you, Adrian. Don't go too far again, as I will be coming back to you very shortly. We're now being joined again by David K. Johnston. Thank you for joining us back here on NewsX World. David, the Supreme Court, as we know, gave him this ruling and just put the stop to it. And now, obviously, he's done these 15% tariffs, global tariffs, and he has 150 days for these tariffs. What do you think the Supreme Court's next steps are going to be for this?
Well, there's no other case in front of the court right now, but the American Constitution, and I'm also a law professor, is eminently clear. Congress, not the president, has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts. That covers tariffs. Now, the Congress has given some limited authority to presidents in emergency and other circumstances to impose tariffs. I think if those were ever brought before the court, you would expect the original textualists on the court to strike that down as being an improper extension of grant of congressional authority to another branch of the government. Here's the problem scenario. Trump could, at the end of the 150 days, let one day go by if Congress doesn't extend the 15% tariffs, which they will not. And then on the 152nd day, he could reimpose them. And my concern would be that the so-called originalists or textualists on the court would say to Congress, well, you could have written the law to prevent this, but you didn't. So too bad. Every 152nd day, the president can reimpose the tariff. That's the kind of mess we've gotten into, and disregard for principles in the Constitution. And this is not good for the world economy. It is not good for trade relations. We are seeing the biggest beneficiary of this has been China, which is busy making deals with Canada, with Australia, our #1 lapdog loyal ally, and with the Europeans. So Donald Trump, through his just utter appalling ignorance about economics, law, or anything else, and seeing the whole world as being about him. And people should know I've known Donald for almost 40 years. I've spent hundreds of hours with him, written 3.5 books about him. That he just believes that anything he says, that's the way it is. He just makes it up, as he did a lot of things in his State of the Union address tonight. This is not good for a stable world. It's not good for Western alliances. I mean, there's nothing good to come out of this.
Thank you, David. Don't go anywhere, as we will be coming back very shortly. From his speech as well, US President Donald Trump has once again claimed credit for stopping 8 wars in his first 10 months in office, including averting a nuclear conflict between India and Pakistan. In his State of the Union address, Trump said he saved Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif from being killed during last year's Operation Sindoor. He also claimed Sharif told him that 35 million people would have died had he not intervened. However, India has repeatedly denied Trump's claims of mediation, stressing that it was direct military talks that led to a ceasefire understanding. Pakistan, meanwhile, had nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for his alleged diplomatic intervention. We are now being rejoined by Adrian. Thank you, Adrian, for coming back to us for this. So as we heard, he said, in my first 10 months, I ended 8 wars. Pakistan and India would have had a nuclear war, and 35 million people would have died if it was not for my involvement. Now, this is a very, very strong statement by Donald Trump for claiming that Pakistan's leader would have had nuclear bombed on him. As we know, Trump has just met, Modi especially, and have formed a relationship. How do you think Pakistan and India are going to take this, and also how everyone else is going to take it, because it's such a strong statement?
Well, that's a great question. I was on the network extensively, and other networks covering Operation Sindoor, and that was never going nuclear. This happens every so often. If you look at Modi's 3 pillars that he set up, it really the whole program, his whole mission was to take out terrorist training camps that were embedded in areas in Pakistan, and one that we're not going to play defense against this anymore. We are going to hold the state responsible, and we're going to hold those areas responsible, and we are ready to target those. And we're not going to be held to nuclear blackmail anymore. So basically, the way I look at this is that Trump saved Pakistan's skin. I would have liked to see India do a little bit of more mopping up of the situation in that operation. Yeah, it's I have a very hard time with this. Pakistan's been playing a duplicitous game with the United States for 30-something years now, so going on 3 more. And India has moved away from the non-aligned movement, and really, I mean, we should be looking to India as our major ally in the world, not just as far as combating terrorism and regional threats, but as an economic partner. That's who we should be praising. That's who we should be reaching out. Pakistan, we just give a lot of aid to. That's about it. We don't get anything in return. They've been a cutout for decades to supposedly talk to the bad guys because they're not that bad. Well, no, they are that bad. They are that bad.
Thank you, Adrian. Again, please don't go too far, as I will be joining back with you very shortly. We're now going to go to David. Again, thank you, David, for joining us back here on NewsX World. Now, as I just said, the statement is very strong. It's a very strong statement, and he obviously got a reaction out of it. He said he solved 8 wars, and he's planning to solve a 9th war, which is Russia and Ukraine. And as we know, they've had many peace talks and we still haven't had a clear set plan. So when he goes to talk about Pakistan and India war and says a nuclear bomb and it was going to go off, how credible can that be?
Donald just makes things up. He exaggerates things. He makes all sorts of claims. He's not used to having journalists fact check him because before he became president, nobody did that. And Adrian is exactly right. The skirmishes that went on over Pakistan providing a cover for people who want to go in and terrorize people in the Kashmir is been going on for a long time, and it's continued to go on. There was no threat of a nuclear war here. And the Modi government has said Trump had nothing to do with bringing about an end to this. And by the way, you know, Ellie, it was just a few weeks ago that Donald said he'd solved 10 wars. I mean, it was 6 before that. It's like his claims of great wealth before the current presidency, where he's enriched himself enormously. But he would just make things up. And he does this all the time. He has this self-aggrandizement need that is just extraordinary. So I pay very little attention to that. I think both Pakistan and India would be foolish to put much weight into the just nonsense that Trump spoke tonight. We should be concerned, however, that he got a standing round of applause from Republicans in the House and Senate who were in the House chamber. For those remarks, because like many others, they're completely divorced from reality.
Thank you, David. Again, please don't go anywhere, as we'll be back with you very shortly. US President Donald Trump also said the war in Gaza Strip is proceeding at a very low level and is just about there, claiming credit for ending multiple global conflicts since taking office. Speaking during his State of Union address, Trump said he had ended 8 wars, including Israel versus Iran and the conflict in Gaza. He praised his envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for their role in negotiating a ceasefire. Trump claimed that under the deal, all hostages, both living and dead, were returned, acknowledging that the final recoveries were difficult. He said Hamas worked with Israel to locate and return remains, calling it a tough but necessary process. We are now going to go back to Adrian. Adrian, thank you for joining us back here. Now, saying that the Israel-Gaza war is just about there and it's nearly ended, is again another very strong statement. But as we know, when reports are coming in, it's nowhere near done. It's still ongoing. Unfortunately, there's still people dying. How do you think everyone's now gonna take this, that he can fix all these wars, but now it doesn't seem credible?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I have a problem with this 20-point plan, and there's several sticking points. And if you look at the first one is de-radicalization of the Gaza Strip. I don't know if these are supposed to be in order or in sequence, but the most important one, the first phase, was getting all the hostages back, and that was supposed to take 72 hours. That took more like 72 days. Now we're talking about rebuilding Gaza and putting together this board of peace and all these things, but no one wants to answer or address the elephant in the room is what's going to happen with points 6 through 8, I think it is. Hamas individuals who want safe passage to a neighboring countries can get it. Hamas has to disarm. Hamas has to destroy their tunnels, has to destroy their weapons, has to destroy their launching pads, whatever they may have. They have to de-radicalize or leave. That's the elephant in the room that no one's going to address, and who's going to do it? Who's going to do it?
Exactly.
The IDF.
Thank you, Adrian. Again, please don't go anywhere. We're now being joined by David again. Thank you, David, for staying with us. With this, I know we lightly touched on it just a bit earlier, but saying again that the Gaza-Israel war is just about over, I think were his exact words that he used. Do you think that people suffering during this time are going to appreciate that? Because he takes full responsibility. He's now got the Board of Peace that he says will stop the war in Gaza, but now he's saying he has kind of stopped it. It's all a bit contradicting.
This is, again, just pure nonsense. I mean, let's go back to what happened October 7th. There was an outrageous Hamas attack that prompted the response. It has been completely out of proportion. The IDF has now acknowledged that Hamas Health Ministry was in the right ballpark when they said there have been 70,000 people killed, whereas October 7th killed about 1,200 people. And what Trump and the IDF operating in the way they have really done is ensured decades more of enmity between Palestinians and Arabs generally against Israel and Jewish citizens there. Netanyahu has done quite a good job of making Israel a pariah state. You have every right to defend your country, but this was a meat axe approach that went way beyond anything that is reasonable and proportionate. And proportionality is a fundamental aspect of international diplomacy and military responses to attacks, and completely gone here. So I don't see any chance of that. Trump, through this sham he calls the Board of Peace, is insisting that there will peaceful reign and there'll be this huge redevelopment and there'll be the Riviera, a new Riviera in Gaza. You notice none of the Palestinians are involved in these discussions. This is all we from the outside will impose this upon you. So this is just nonsense. It will make things just continue as they have now for all of my lifetime since Israel emerged as a state in the modern world, and it's going to continue till, I suspect, after my great-granddaughter is gone.
Thank you, David, for joining here. We will be back with you shortly. US President Donald Trump has called for Congress to pass tough new voter ID laws ahead of the upcoming November midterm elections. Speaking during his State of Union address, Trump pushed for the approval of the Save America Act, which demands proof of citizenship to register and an ID to vote. He claimed that electoral cheating is widespread, although he provided no evidence to support these allegations. Trump urged lawmakers to prioritize this bill, which he believes is vital to prevent illegal voting. He also accused Democrats of opposing voter ID laws because, according to him, they want to cheat. While the bill has widespread public support, it faces opposition in Congress, especially from Senate Democrats. We are just being joined by Adrian again now. Thank you for staying with us, Adrian, for this coverage. With the voter ID laws, we know it's stemmed from the elections when Biden was voted into office, because Trump came out and said how they cheated and how he was meant to win, and made all these accusations, saying that it's false, they're falsified electoral votes. And now he's saying he wants the voter ID for this upcoming midterm election. First of all, how do you think these midterm elections are going to come up for him, as we know that some American citizens have also started doubting how he can do? And second of all, do you think there's going to be much of an uproar for these voter IDs?
Well, I'll first predicate this by saying I'm not a legal expert, but I'm a bit of a reformed political scientist to a certain degree. And, you know, there's been voter fraud going on for forever. You know, it's increasingly become a drumbeat. I think it's been exacerbated by the illegal immigrants that have come into the country. So, you know, I think we should have an honest conversation with ourselves that people who are citizens of this country should be voting in this country. Like, I don't think I have the right to go vote in Canada under any circumstance, even though I spent 5 years up there. Under no circumstances should I be allowed to vote in a Canadian election. So I don't think it's unreasonable for people to show some form of ID. And I understand most people don't have a driver's license, but there's got to be some form of ID that people have to be able to vote. And I don't think there's got to be some type of methods to make sure that there isn't fraud taking place, but you know, the people that are supposed to be voting can cast their vote, and it's not voter intimidation at the same time, or seen as voter intimidation at the same time. Will this blow back in his face? Possibly. We'll see how it goes. You know, we'll see. Time will tell, I guess. But I think there's been you know, calls on both sides for no voter IDs versus, yeah, everybody should have a voter ID or some type of identification when they go vote. I just have to go in and basically tell them where I live and sign something, and they kind of match it up with a signature. I think that's what they do. Maybe if it's that intensive, that's basically what they do. I'm like, wow, that's pretty shocking. I could have voted for all of my children right here, or whomever, but I, of course, would never do something like that. So.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump uses State of the Union stage to warn Iran over nuclear and security threats. He highlighted Iran's missile and nuclear activities as grave risks and hinted at possible stronger measures, even as he said diplomacy remains preferable. The top Democratic senator called US President Donald Trump's record-length Senate of the Union speech delusional and said it failed to address the struggles of ordinary Americans. Bill Gates took responsibility for his actions over ties to late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in a town hall meeting with employees of the Gates Foundation. Documents released by the US Department of Justice had indicated that Gates and Epstein met repeatedly after Epstein's prison term. The UK's government is committing to releasing documents on ex-Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's past role as a trade envoy after the Jeffrey Epstein scandal widened with the arrest of the veteran UK politician. British police say searches at Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's former home in southeast England have concluded after the former prince was arrested last week of suspicion of misconduct in public office due to his ties with the late US sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. China's Premier Li Qiang urged Germany to help safeguard global free trade. He said he was facing headwinds He said China and Germany, as two major economies, should jointly safeguard multilateralism and free trade. Li told German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as the two met in Beijing. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Israel for a two-day visit that both countries have cast as a chance to deepen relations, as regional concerns mount over the risk of military conflict between the United States and Iran. The UN General Assembly voiced support for Ukraine on the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion. It passed by a tally of 107 countries, with 12 against and 51 abstentions, which included the United States. And we start with some breaking news for this hour. The United States has deployed a dozen F-22 Raptor fighter jets to Israel, continuing its military build-up in the Middle East amid escalating tensions with Iran. Flight tracking data shows the jets left Britain, heading towards the region ahead of crucial negotiations with Iran about its nuclear program. US officials confirmed the deployment, noting that some jets have already arrived in Israel. The F-22 Raptors, known for their advanced stealth capabilities, are seen as a sign of the US preparing for more aggressive stance towards Iran. Experts have emphasized that the deployment signals a potential cooperation between the US and Israel in case of a military action. This move adds to the growing US military presence in the region, which already includes 2 aircraft carrier strikes groups and over 60 fighter jets stationed in Jordan. And for your top stories this hour, US President Donald Trump announced a major energy deal for data centers during his State of Union address, saying the agreement would support rapidly growing digital infrastructure across the country. Trump said the deal would ensure reliable and affordable power for data centers as demand surged from artificial intelligence and cloud computing. He described the move as key to maintaining US technological leadership and attracting investment. Trump said the plan would create jobs and strengthen energy security while reducing reliance on foreign supply chains. Few details were provided, with officials saying more information would follow. We're now being joined by Professor Veselin Popovsky, who is a professor and Vice Dean, Jindal Global Law and School, who's joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What are the potential benefits and pitfalls of President Trump's ratepayer protection pledge, which aims to have major tech companies generate their own electricity for AI data centers to prevent higher consumer energy bills?
Well, certainly this is a concern for many. Indeed, those centers need a lot of electricity, a lot of energy, and if they can produce their own, that would not add to the bill of everybody else, the regular consumer. So generally, that's possibly a good way to express that concern. But apart from that, I think not much we can think of assisting or adding. These are big corporations. They do a lot of research. They collect a lot of data. They operate independently from any governmental intervention. I really don't know why the president is talking about this. This is something that companies should do. He's a president, and less he intervenes in the business of every company, better. In fact, this is what traditionally the conservative parties do. They don't intervene in the business of private companies. And in America, those private companies are pretty strong. They don't need the president to tell them what to do. They will do the best for them and their shareholders. They understand the issue of need of extra electricity and energy. They will do it very clearly. So even if President Trump didn't say anything about this, that doesn't mean anything. For that matter, I didn't even watch the State of Union address. I didn't expect anything from this president. He proved to be basically useless because everything he